Hi everyone, Azriel Knight here with another episode of the Darkroom Night. In this video, we'll be taking a look back almost 50 years to an article I found in the spring 1972 issue of 35mm Photography magazine. In this issue, I found 10 darkroom tips, most of which are still relevant today. Many of them I've already used in my darkroom, but also a couple that surprised me. Stay tuned. This list is in no particular order except the way it was presented in the article, written by Edward Mayers. Whenever possible, I have added my own experiences and in some cases updated the tip for the 2020s. Let's get started. No magical developers. The first tip in the article says that there are many exotic developers available today. And while that may not be as true in 2021 as it was in 1972, the essence of what the tip is remains the same. Don't get caught up in a bunch of different developers, or be, as he says, misled by friends who recommend the virtues of one against another. It's not about having a dozen developers on your shelf and using the quote-unquote perfect one for each situation. It's about picking one and mastering it, using it until you can consistently produce predictable results. Mayers suggests starting with the manufacturer's instructions, then adjusting to taste. For example, if a recommended 7-minute developing time gives you excessive contrast in your negatives, shorten the time to 6 minutes, then maybe 5 if necessary. Don't use another developer until you fully explore the first. Use clean water. This one may be obvious to many film developers, but using filtered water for your entire process is one of the easiest ways to ensure clean negatives. As Mayer suggests, I found my biggest problem with tap water to be the presence of small particles that ended up on my dried negatives. Buying distilled water at your grocery store or pharmacy is recommended. If you're looking to save money, however, there are a couple of solutions. If you insist on tap water for the majority of your work, at the very least, use distilled water in your wetting agent solution. The other way to save money is to buy a filter that attaches to your faucet. Speaking of saving money, that is the next tip listed: how to save money. While it may be tempting to buy all of the official equipment, a lot of the time you can find much cheaper alternatives. Here are a few examples that I have used over the years. Graduates, funnels, stirring devices, and digital thermometers can be all found in the bakery section of your department store. Storage bottles, exhaust fans, and blackout plastic can be found at your indoor garden center. If you're looking for stuff a bit more official, like a super accurate mercury thermometer, graduates of various sizes, amber glass bottles, and stirring rods, a lab supplies shop is a good place to fulfill these needs. Filter processing chemicals. Now here's a tip I should be using more often: filtering out particles. The article recommends placing some facial tissue in a funnel and pouring your chems through it. Although it is better to use a proper filter paper, available from a chemical supply company, I have found that facial tissue works well enough. I actually think I have a better solution than tissue, and that's coffee filters. I've used them in the past, and they do a really good job removing particles. 2 water spouts. Ideally, an efficient wet darkroom has 2 water spouts, says Mayers. While you are washing negatives or prints with one, you can be cleaning your processing tanks or mixing chemicals with the other. I happen to have this set up, in a sense. Attached to my darkroom, which is a spare bedroom, is a bathroom, but I also have a utility sink placed over the toilet, and I use the shower head to fill it. Sometimes I'll have darkroom dishes soaking, and it's nice to have a backup if I'm developing a roll of film or if I need to wash small prints. Mayers suggested a Y adapter, each with its own cutoff valve. Cleanliness pays. Now this next tip is one that I have never tried before. Mayers says, have you noticed the stains on your developing tray? That's silver. Not enough to save and sell, but enough to contaminate the quality of prints you develop in that tray. Honestly, I had no idea. I just figured they get dirty, but they're fine and harmless. I've scrubbed the tray before and I'd get a little out of it, but his solution just blew me away. Use silver polish. I decided to give it a shot. I had some old silver polish, and when I got started, I realized it had separated in the bottle over time, so I gave it a quick shake, and I was off to the races. I used a generous amount, and I worked with a paper towel at first. You can see it's coming off quite readily. I switched to a scrubbing pad and did the rest of the work off camera, and here are the results. Pretty dramatic, but not as much as I was hoping. A couple of opinions here. One, I think Mayers likely used a metal tray, which would have made cleaning easier. And two, I think this would have worked better if it wasn't so far gone with stains. Personally, I'm likely going to replace the tray and be more on top of cleaning in the future. Where to dry negatives. If you take the trouble to use distilled water for your chemicals and filter your wash water, and then neglect to clean dry your negatives, all this previous care will be wasted. I'll admit, there was a time where I was that guy, but then I graduated to a plastic clothing storage bag for hanging my negatives, and my world changed. I used to spend a lot of time blowing off my negatives and then digitally removing what I missed in my scans. Or worse, making a print in the darkroom only to find my favorite photo was filthy. Just like the article said, I was undoing the extra steps I took to try and prevent this. I had an extremely generous viewer build and donate a drying cabinet last year. You may know him as the Real Peter from previous episodes, and it's a total game changer. Nothing like before. The plastic clothing storage bag does a good job too, and it comes cheap. If you can't find one long enough to handle a 36 roll of film, just cut out the bottom. Dust floats downward, so chances are that a few frames sticking out of the bottom won't be affected, says Mayers. Eliminate contact proofs. This one I didn't expect. The article suggests to just do away with contact proofs completely. Surprised, he says? You shouldn't be. A contact proof sheet cannot tell you anything conclusive about the image sharpness. To do this, you must examine each negative with a good 15 times to 50 times magnifier. Mayers suggested just getting a good magnifier and a light box. But the 21st century solution, in my opinion, would be to examine your high-resolution scans. I liked the idea of contact sheets. I even did a video for my patrons a couple months ago making a bunch of them. But honestly, they're a pain in the ass. And this voice from the past telling me not to bother is enough for me to swear them off at this point. Make a print easel. In this tip, Mayers talks about making large prints, like 16 by 20 and up. And the easiest way to make the print stay flat is to use a large piece of masonite and photo mounting adhesive. This is the only tip in this list I would say is probably not worth following. The reason being is that it recommends a product that is either not readily available or even available at all anymore. Photo mounting adhesive. Now I know if you Google it, you'll get plenty of results, but it's not the same thing. The photo mounting adhesive you find online is permanent, meant to fix photos to a backing. The mounting adhesive mentioned by Mayers gives you a sticky easel that peels off the board like an adhesive bandage. Maybe I'm wrong, perhaps it does exist, but the way it's named makes it really hard to research. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments, and if you do insist on giving this sticky easel a try, I left a recipe for one in the description. Fog with fibers. A lot of photographers tend to shoot several different lighting conditions on a single 35mm roll, and according to Mayers, things like contrasty direct sunlight often demands that you reduce your film development by 30 to 40% to cut that contrast. One solution he noted was that some photographers develop by inspection. After development is about 50 to 60% completed, they view the developing film in front of a greenish, safe light. They can then cut the fully developed frames out of the roll and return the underdeveloped ones to the developer until the process is satisfactorily completed. Mayers says it's a mess and he wouldn't even attempt it. Instead, develop for the majority of the frames. Any images developed outside of the majority can be tweaked in the final print. For bright, overexposed skies, Mayers recommends a quick flash of light from the trusty flashlight onto the desired area on the sheet of enlarging paper will put tone in the sky. He also recommends a pen light with fiber optics for smaller areas. By holding the pen light turned on to one side of your enlarging easel, you fog the highlight portions of your picture during enlarging exposure by pointing the fiber end at the area that you want to be darker. He says at first, fog exposure is a hit or miss technique, but you will get the hang of it. I've heard about pre-flashing from watching a couple of videos on it, but I have to admit, it's not a technique I've tried, and I certainly can't give you advice on the matter. I do know someone with more experience on it though, and I've invited him to say a few words on the matter. You might say he's known for flashing, the naked photographer.
Thanks, Azriel. Pre-flashing is the idea that we need to get the paper to a certain threshold of exposure before it begins to build density. Think of it like a rock on the top of a cliff. If you want to push it over, you have to expend a certain amount of energy to get it to start to move. Then the rest of your energy is used in carrying through the movement. Same thing with paper. Pre-flashing puts enough energy in the emulsion to get it started to expose, but not past exposure. Then the exposure from the negative will then build density on top of that. And all of the energy used through the negative is for density creation and not reaching the threshold. If you want to see more information on how to do it, then check out my video right there.
Thanks so much to the naked photographer for contributing his wisdom to this video. It's super appreciated, and make sure you check out his channel, link in the description. That's all for now, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this video. I would love to hear your darkroom tips in the comments. If you like what I do on this channel, be sure and check the description for a list of ways you can contribute. You can also follow me on Instagram and Twitter, and until next time, stay classic.